I'd like to welcome youth councillors. We've got Max and Emma. Hi, welcome. We've also got a student sitting with us for the day. They're shadowing us somewhat. Jacob Bowater is here and he's sitting in the gallery. He's on his, it's the community work exploration day, so he's here following us for that. He's got an interest in politics and the community, and I hope we don't lose him during the day, but just stick with us, Jacob. You never know. We have our ups and downs. It could get a little bit dull, but it could also be exciting, so you never know. So welcome. We have an apology from Councillor Rutledge, and the Mayor will be absent from 10 a.m. approximately. So I'd like to ask someone to move. Councillor Courtney, that we receive that. Seconded by Councillor Laurie. I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Just a reminder that we are live streaming, so you know what that means in all its forms, which is great. We've also got a Community Services Founders workshop at Founders looking at our 10-year strategy. So that's going to be a high-level, large piece of work that we're going to be starting today. So we'll be convening down there for lunch after this meeting, and I cannot tell you how long this will take, so we're not going to guess. It depends on how we go, so we will keep you updated on that. A couple of corrections to the minutes from the previous meeting you may want to jot through now. Item 8, the Youth Council Constitution and Update. Oh, sorry, that's on this agenda. The item 8, it was incorrectly stated that on the hard copy that Rachel Large was the report writer, but the report is actually from the Nelson Youth Council itself. It's been corrected on the online edition for those that have those. And the confirmation of minutes from the last meeting, the youth councillors Alex Hunter and Nathaniel Race have been added as in attendance. They were omitted from the first round, so that's been corrected. So I'll move now to the, there's also a public forum. You'll notice a lovely group of people in the public area, and they're going to be presenting, it's Nelson Festivals Trust Board, they're going to be presenting us with a overhead of where they've got to, so we'll welcome them shortly.
Madam, can I just acknowledge the daffodils on your...
Deputy Mayor, you may have a moment now. Yes, these are not for me specifically, so I'll ask the Deputy Mayor to explain what they're for. Thank you.
Good. Just to remind everybody that tomorrow is Daffodil Day, and I'm on the Cancer Society. We've got some 400 volunteers out there tomorrow. It's probably the largest number of volunteers doing a collection all at once. It's huge. There's thousands of daffodils being packed and distributed as we speak to the business houses. And it's special for everybody because we've all suffered. My wife has been dead now for 20 years on Monday, so that's a long time. And we all got the family together and her brothers and sisters, and we had a weekend of celebration amongst ourselves, which was absolutely wonderful. So yes, we've all been touched. So tomorrow's your chance just to take a few minutes to remember those that you know who have been touched by cancer, and contribute to the good work that the Society does. So I thought I'd bring that in this morning.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm sure everyone here has been touched with cancer, and just thinking about those that might be going through some treatment right now. I'm sure we've got people that we know of who I can see people that I know have that situation, and as myself, I have a friend at the moment receiving treatment, so I guess we send our thoughts out to them. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm going back to the agenda now, and item 3, I just want you to let me know if there are any interests on the agenda today. If you realise that we get across one and you have, then please let me know. I'm now going to have much pleasure in asking the Nelson Festivals Trust Board to come to the table. Sarah Yarrow is going to present. Sarah, if you want a friend with you, you're welcome to have one. There's several seats.
I'll bring what?
Okay, fine.
Oh, bear with. I'll keep going here. Well, thanks very much for having us, Madam Chair, Madam Mayor and councillors and staff. It's lovely to be here this morning. I'm Sarah Yarrow and I am on the board of the Nelson Festivals Trust, and behind me I have some of my fellow trust members. And we're here today just presenting very quickly in the public forum because you'll have an item on your agenda today just in regards to our trust deed. So we just thought it was a great opportunity to come in. You can clap eyes on us and see that we're real and we're out here in the world doing some work for Nelson and for the festival. So we've just got a very short presentation, but before I do that I just want to introduce my fellow trustees that are sitting here. So we've got Ali Boswick, Debbie Hannon next to Ali there, Caroline Marshall at the back, you can, and Sarah Sharp. And we've got two missing today. We're missing Pic, Pico and Fido. They go as a pair. And obviously our chair, Brent Thorley, can't be here today. For some reason, Invercargill was more attractive for him today. So they must play sport down there or something. He must be doing something down there. Right, let's get on with it. So it should work. So we're just going to do a very brief overview. You're going to get into a little bit more detail in the report that Shanine's going to be presenting to you. So yeah, really just like I said, it's just to give you an update on where we are as a trust and how we're feeling about how we're going. So obviously the council will know this, independent governing body now for the festival. We're in the process of forming the trust and we'll take over the running of the festival from 2019. So we're pretty excited about that. So right now we are in the process of working through our, that's fine, we've been through that one. I'll just whip through some of the things we're up to. So it kind of falls into three buckets. We're looking at structuring ourselves so we're fit for purpose. We're looking at structuring ourselves so we can be set up for success, and then we're looking at the nuts and bolts of the operational stuff that we need to be doing through the transition. So in a way, it's no small task. It's moving an entire, basically, organisational operation out of the council and into an independent organisation. So there's quite a lot that needs to be done around that, right down to who answers the phone on the first day and what the phone number is, and business cards and cars and all that kind of thing. Having staff in the right places. So still very much at the front end though, setting up the legal aspects of it. So that's what the report is about today on the agenda. So looking at the trust deed and getting that signed off and into the charities board so that we can actually be set up as an entity. But just to assure you, we're taking care of some of the other background stuff around indemnity insurance, making sure the transition is running smoothly. So that's around getting us sort of fit for purpose. The second bit around set up for success. We've already started to look at a strategy piece of work. So we're really looking at how do we make sure that the festival remains strong into the future, that we're set up to deliver what the Nelson community wants, and that we partner with the council on making sure that we do that in the best way. So we've about to contract Business Lab, who's a local strategy specialist here in Nelson. They've done some great work around collective impact in economy and social development all around New Zealand. So we're really lucky that they're based here and we can work with them. And so we're going to start to look at what does the future of the festival look like for the Nelson community. So that's an exciting piece of work we're going to be running through the second half of this year. And then we're really looking at to the future around getting established as an organisation, and then looking to the future around our funding sources. So there's quite a bit going on. So we want to finalise the trust deed, working with Shanine, and we're really grateful to have Shanine and the support of Mark and Roger around this work. The team have been great within Community Services with their support. So we've got a really strong team working together on the transition. We're looking at the employment processes. So obviously we're going to need some staff. We're going to deliver the festival for us. So we're working on who those people will be and how we're going to bring them together. And then obviously we want to make sure that our agreements around the investment of the council and the festival remain strong, and we've got those structured really well. And then obviously more money. So that's it from me, I think. Yep.
Thank you, Sarah. Happy to take any questions.
Absolutely.
Any questions? Councillor Laurie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, other members of the board. It's very exciting. It feels really good to have got to this stage. I'm just wondering, in terms of strategy, one part of that, I presume, is thinking about whether or not the festival is going to be an annual or a biannual event. Have you given any thought to that at this stage?
No thought at all, other than to maintain it as an annual event. So, and I think the strategy process will help us to decide.
Fantastic. And through the chair, what about making contact or building on connections with existing sponsors? Where does that come in the process?
now.
Right.
So it's an ongoing process. So we'll be chatting with sponsors through the festival this year, 2018. So we'll be around as the board wanting to make those connections, and then obviously aligning those sponsors with where our strategy direction might go in the future as well.
And last question through the chair. What sort of feedback are you getting from our existing sponsors to the transition?
Very supportive. Actually, everyone is extremely supportive of what we're up to. Yeah.
Right.
So.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you.
No
Councillor
problem.
Courtney?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Sarah, thank you for your presentation. Sarah, is it too early to ask you this, but you say staffing. Where are you intending to draw your staff from? And why I'm asking this is because we have had, up until now, until the formation of this new trust, a very good team here at Nelson City Council. So will you be drawing some of those people
That's the
from here?
intention, yes. Councillor Courtney, yes.
And what sort of numbers are you looking at to
At
start?
this stage, we're not entirely sure, but so we're just working through what's the volume of the work that needs to be done, and therefore what are the staffing requirements. But it doesn't affect the 2018 or 2019 festival.
No.
So we're really looking at getting our feet under the table really solidly as the new trust from 2020.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's all the questions. I just wanted to thank the Trust Board for their willingness to serve. We're very pleased that we're absolutely rapt actually, that you put yourselves forward for this work. I met with Brent last week because he wasn't able to get here today, and we talked about you coming back and telling us how you're going, maybe twice a year, and absolutely happy to be approached any time in between if there's anything that you want any help on, and I know that Janine is working with you at the moment, so thank you so much for coming in today as well. It's really fantastic.
And Madam Chair, I just want to acknowledge the great work that you and Councillor Courtney did in obviously recruiting such great people onto the board. Well done.
I can only agree with you. We did, didn't we? Thank you. I'm going to go to the minutes next to confirm those, and then we'll be moving straight on. I've asked for this item on the trustee to be brought forward on our original draft of the agenda so that the trust members can stay if they wish. We understand if you've got other things that you need to go and do. So we're going to be looking at item 5 on the agenda, which is the confirmation of minutes, and I'll be looking for someone to move that those are a true and correct record. Councillor Courtney, thank you. Councillor Fulton, second. I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving to item 6, and I think we've got Shanine's coming to present this. Welcome back. We haven't seen you in the chamber for a wee while, so you're looking extremely well, and we're very happy to see your smiling face again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's exciting to be back, and things do change. I've come back to new speakers and microphones.
Yes, at long
How
last we've got
exciting.
something that's reliable.
Oh, wireless! Oh my gosh. Anyway, so tēnā koutou katoa. Good morning, Madam Mayor, Madam Chair and councillors and everyone else who's here as well. Youth councillors, good to see you at the table again. So as you're aware, we've got a wonderful board in place, and many of the members are here this morning, and I just also want to acknowledge the effort that they've put in to date, and it's been great working with them. And there's also some blokes involved, so it's not just females, but yeah, it's a really great board, and I think just the calibre of people involved just shows the dedication to the Nelson Arts Festival, and I think council can safely say it'll be in safe hands once it's transitioned to the trust. So the report in front of you today outlines the proposed amendments to the Nelson Festival's trust deed. As you're aware, council saw the first draft of the trust deed back in December before the board was in place. So since then, the board's been appointed and they've had a chance to have a look and had some comments and suggestions for the trust deed to be reviewed, and have requested changes which are outlined in the report in front of you today. The staff recommendation is that these are approved, and then the trust will be able to be incorporated and we can move on from there. So I'll take the report as read, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Do we have any questions of the officer? Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Going on a little bit of a tangent, but it picks up on a question earlier from Councillor Courtney. When we go to this transition, will we be losing staff from Nelson City, or will we have increased capacity to do festival type work in Nelson, or events type work at Nelson City?
Through the chair, so that's all still a work in progress at the moment, but my thoughts are that we'd more likely have increased capacity rather than less.
Right.
And who knows what the trust might be able to do for us in future.
May I comment?
Thank you. Mr. Paul would like to add a comment to that.
Thank you. Through the chair, I might add a comment. I think if we're talking about increased capacity, we're referring to the extra capacity of having the trust. There will be a reduction in Nelson City Council staffing members as a result of this transition. And we're working very closely with the trust members to make that as smooth as possible and to ensure that the rights and the situation of those who might be impacted are respected and taken account of. That's well advanced, and those involved appear to be quite happy with the way things are unfolding. Obviously, in this forum, I can't say terribly much more, but yes, there will be a reduction in our staffing as a result of this. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm now looking at what we're being asked to do today, and that is to receive the report. So I'd ask for somebody to receive that. Thank you, Councillor Laurie. Councillor Fulton, thank you. I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. So now we're looking at the actual deed itself, and we don't seem to have any questions. You may go. You don't have to sit there any longer. So I'm looking for somebody to move the amended trust deed itself. Councillor Courtney, thank you, and I'll second it. So I'll put, there's no debate, I'll put that, thank you. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. It's done, you can go and get on and do what you want with it. Thank you for coming this morning. Right, I'm moving on now to the Chair's report, pages 40 to 44. There are a couple of things here. First of all, I'll ask if there are any questions on the report. We're a quiet bunch today, aren't we? I'm not complaining. Right, well, there are a couple of things that I wanted to raise. I've put a note in here, I'm just still trying to find it, 40 to 44. Right, at 2.4. So when I've been out and about, there've been people talking to me about what they want to do with youth in Stoke and how we deal with that. And there are a couple of things I've asked some questions of you really in this paragraph, and I wondered whether there was any feedback on that to start with, whether you've had a chance to think about it or whether it's something that you may want to have a small group discussion on to further that. Councillor Laurie.
Well, since you put these thoughts out there, Madam Chair, I'm a little bit concerned about the idea that we might need to remove the youth from the other people in Stoke. I like the idea of people of all generations living and working and playing together, and maybe there's some best practice research that says that is the right thing to do, but since you've suggested that in your report, my instinct is that if we're going to have harmony and happiness in Stoke, then we want to find a way to bring people together, not be separating out different age groups and things. So those are my thoughts on that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I am curious as to where we're at in terms of so-called antisocial behaviour around the library and the square. Are we just sort of, are things chilling out? Are they getting worse? Are they staying the same? Where are we at?
Okay, I'll ask Mr. Ball if he's got an update on that or if he can call on someone who can help us with that particular one.
I'll give a brief update.
Okay.
Through the chair, in that spectrum between chilling out and getting worse, I think we're more at the chilling out end of the spectrum. The reports and the trend lines and the information coming back to me from Stoke Library staff are positive. our intention, and I'll just look through to Mark for a nod. I think we're planning a report on how that is going as part of the report back that's required on the funding that was allocated for support services and security out at Stoke. So that will come through in due course.
So our next meeting is,
It won't be for the next meeting.
Okay.
But I think we're obligated to provide that by the end of the year in order to support the question, in order to address the question of whether that additional funding is required for the future.
okay, thank you. I've got the Mayor next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate your report and good suite of items there. Great to see the submission that's gone through to the New Zealand Positive Ageing Strategy, and I'm very supportive of that submission. It's really good. Just in relation to the discussion we're just having around Stoke, and in particular in terms of youth activities and organisations that are interacting with youth, I'm strongly encouraging of moving forward in that direction and building some good partnerships with others. There is a need in the Stoke community for a really visible presence of the value of young people to the community, and interactions and positive interactions. So really encourage the team to be just working with the partners that it seem to be out there at the moment. In relation to 2.5, just in terms of the Stoke, what are we calling it, the Stoke Youth Intergenerational Park project, I'd quite like there to be some governance interaction with that, and I find with these projects it's really useful often for the officers to have some kind of go-to people, and for this one I would perhaps encourage yourself, Madam Chair, just to be perhaps providing that governance interaction, and if I could be so bold as to suggest that Councillor Fulton would be a really valuable governor to be involved in that as well. I know that you valued her contribution through the development of the youth strategy, so it seems to me that it's a logical extension that we maintain the council interaction if she was willing.
Thank you. I think I agree with that. Councillor Fulton was very helpful with the strategy. At this point, before I come to Councillor Fulton, I might ask Ms Barton to come forward and actually to see whether you've got anything more to add to 2.5, or whether any questions as a result of what you might want to say.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So you'll be aware that as part of the long-term plan process, we brought forward funding for a Stoke Youth facility of some form. It's named the Stoke Youth Park in the long-term plan as a budget line. In order to kick that project off, there are a team of officers that are working with 2 external consultants to do some very preliminary work around what has happened to date in the past, because part of informing where we might get to is actually understanding where we've got to in the past. So for example, in 2012 there was a survey of Nayland College students, so a number of them, and interestingly part of the commentary that came back, if there could be more activities in Stoke for youth, what would they be? The idea of a skate park alone, only 10% of the respondents were actually in support of. So this kind of information will come back to the governance table, but we're just in the very preliminary stages of doing that. And then as part of that, we can work out the next steps.
Madam Mayor, did you want to respond to that?
Look, I did. I'm really delighted that Claire and the team have got on with this one, because it is, we did bring it forward, and it's great to know that that work's underway. And there is quite a history to it. But again, I always think these projects go best when
hand in hand,
when they're hand in hand or hand in glove, however you want to talk about it. And just thinking about the work that's been going on, I know Councillor Fulton's third-term councillor and has been involved with this right the way through. So I just think that historical context would actually be quite useful to connect in at this stage.
I think that both Councillor Fulton and myself would be happy to make ourselves available when you've got the information collated. At the nearest point possible, we could make ourselves available to give some input on that. I don't think we need a resolution on that. I think that's, if Councillor Fulton's happy with that. Yes.
Yes, through the chair, I'm more than happy to be involved in that process, and yes, 2000, I think it goes back to 2010, 2011, there was many iterations of trying to find, initially it was proposed to be a skate park, but then it developed into a youth park and trying to find a suitable site. I think, whilst I completely concur with Councillor Laurie about intermixing, and that's really important that we ensure people come together and gather in places where we have multiple ages. I think that the youth of Stoke have been waiting for many, many years, so since before my first term, for a place or a space which they can feel like is their home and their place. And I think the indoor-outdoor flow of that is quite important. I don't think we're talking about just a skate park anymore. If I look back, we haven't always got it right, but the hub in Nelson was, in its heyday, a great place for the youth of Nelson CBD to come and hang out, and we've managed to achieve that in Victory and to a degree in Tahuna now. So I think that the youth of Stoke have been waiting for a long time for council to find a way to provide a space for them which does have an indoor space and an outdoor space. That indoor-outdoor connection is really important, and in the same way the seniors have their space to go to, we need to be looking to how we can provide for that for Stoke youth, particularly those who might not have a stable home base themselves. So I'm more than happy to be involved in that, and yes, have quite a lot of memories of all the locations and best ways forward.
She's ahead of me. I don't know the spaces in Stoke that are hangouts, but there you go. Thank you. Have you got a question of Ms Barton? Sorry, you need to stay a little longer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the Chair, I'm just wondering if we could have just a reminder of where things are at in terms, I know we brought this project forward in the LTP, but if everything goes according to plan, how long before we see a youth facility in Stoke?
So through you, Madam Chair, the funding lines are over the following 3 years. So this year was for scoping exercises, going out to the community, validating the site's options. Next year would be design and start of build and building confirmed in year 3.
Great. So through the Chair, when do you think we'll be looking at concepts in terms of, like we've talked about skate park, Councillor Fulton's talking about a building. When do you think we'd be at that stage that we're making a decision about what kind of concept direction we'll be heading in?
Through you, Madam Chair, the critical thing here is making sure that when we go out and do the next iteration of consultation, not just with youth but with the wider community in Stoke, we do have some concepts, some ideas for them to think about, but not locking them down, because we actually want to hear what they want. So probably in terms of firming up design options, it wouldn't be before the end of this financial year.
Thank you. I imagine it's an iterative process. What we start with may not look what we end up with at all. We'll probably have a lot of feedback from a lot of people, and just I think we need to remain flexible in our thinking of where it might lead, and be a little brave as well, potentially. So thank you, Ms Barton. I sort of see this as a two-step process. I mean, there are groups, as I've said, that are looking at spaces now, and I'd like to see that we are warm to those suggestions, that if they're youth related and specifically, that we actually help them get into the Stoke area and start operating, because I think it's part of where we're going to go in the end. Now I've got hands up all over the place. I'll take Councillor McGurk first, and then Councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. We're just moving away from the youth aspect, but is there any thought been given about the future of the Stoke Memorial Hall? Is there any thought about a long-term strategy for that particular space and that particular building?
Very good question. I'll be looking to my left in a moment, but I'll just preface that by saying that when I've been out and about talking to the older generation who served, they're very connected to that building. Yeah. We have had an earthquake assessment on that, so I'm not sure whether we've got the finals on that. My lead would be to get everyone settled in the new building, and then have a look at the rest of that area. But I'll look to Mr. Ball to comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Nothing really to add. I think what you concluded there about getting everybody settled in the new building is what we're focused on at the moment, and then I think we reassess how we want to approach these other spaces and building in a number of the other threads that are under discussion here. So I'm sorry, there isn't a long-term plan in place for that yet. We're very focused on finishing the job in front of us. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate this, in terms of affection felt, the Stoke Memorial Hall is one that there's a great deal of community affection for that
Yes,
building,
there is.
along with other facilities out there, for instance,
I'm very aware of it, as you probably are. There has been no decision or even a discussion about it, as far as I'm aware. No discussion at this point. So we're all right. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I've said in the past, as a Stoke resident, I speak on behalf of the Stoke youth in some respect, and I can say that the great majority of them are excellent young citizens. The ones that live in the area that I'm in, is that they're really, really good people. I hope that during the consultation process and looking at what we're going to do, that we get to the majority of the students, we get to the majority of the young people and get their views, not just a vocal minority. It's very important to me that we look at the wider aspect of the youth that are getting on with their lives, reaching their goals, working in the community. They're usually silent. I want to make sure that they are considered and that their views are taken into account.
Absolutely. We have got two youth councillors here. You can add to this commentary if you would like. There's no compunction for you to do so, but if there's anything that you want to give us in a direction of things to think about, then if there's nothing at the top of your head, which is quite likely, just Emma's going to speak. Excellent.
I think this is really important, and I know a lot of youth in Stoke are really keen to have this happen, whether they're kids at intermediate or college, so it's really important to get all ages of youth, as it's quite a big range. And the Youth Council has always discussed this, and we're really happy that this is happening and want to kind of help and give concepts and designs, because we do have some ideas of what youth want.
Right, thank you. Well, Ms. Barton's probably hearing that. Yes, she is, so that's awesome. So we're going to move back. I think I've seen all the questions. We're going to move back to the resolution. I would like to move that the chairperson's report is received and we approve retrospectively the submission to the government's consultation on a new strategy to prepare for an ageing population. Now, do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Is there any discussion? I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Now moving on to item 8, which is the Youth Council Constitution and Update. Do we have an officer coming to present to that, or are the students going to do that? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So recently at Youth Council, it's been a little bit quiet as we're all getting ready for our school exams. However, we've still been attending some events such as the Miyazu Student Visit, Blessing of the Fleet, and we will be attending the Trustpower Community Awards soon, as we nominated ourselves as well as some other groups such as St. John's and Victory Boxing. So one of the big things that we've been working on has been adopting a terms of reference to replace our constitution. We decided to do this as our previous constitution was really hard to understand. It was really long, and it was quite hard for first-term youth councillors to come in and pick up all this new information. So what we did, we looked at terms of references from other youth councils around New Zealand, and then we kind of created our own that was suited to us and our needs. Basically, the biggest thing we did was changing the language and structure just to make it more concise and shorter so that we could all understand it without losing any of the meaning or value. And so now we can effectively use it to guide all of our decisions and actions so that we know what we're undertaking is actually what we should be doing and what we want to do. So as it says in the report, we did make some minor changes, such as removing number of each type of representatives, as it was very confusing, but this doesn't change our application process at all, and it's still the same groups that will be represented. And then we also changed our stance on attendance and termination, because a big thing to us is having all youth councillors committed and involved. Otherwise, there's no point them taking a seat if they're not going to take all the opportunities given to them. So now, this document is really accessible and it belongs to us, so it's really important that we understand what it's saying. So either of us will be happy to answer any questions, but first I'll pass it to Max to talk about some projects we've been undertaking.
So one of the big projects that we've been working on at the moment is the Old Lumpy skate park, and we I think Emma and Campbell were responsible with the kind of the driving force behind that. So it's been painted, and we contribute towards an information board next to the skate park, so the people who use the park will be informed of the heritage and the history that goes along with that. Early on this year, some of us got the chance to attend the Top of the South Youth Forum. So that's basically a mix and mingle session with the other youth councillors of the South Island. And it was just a way for us to kind of get inside each other's heads and understand what works for other people. For example, I think Kaikoura are very much focused on the youth at the moment in the wake of the earthquakes that happened 2 years ago, I think. In the future, we're going to be involved in the Mass Parade, which is coming up soon, and we've liaised with Michelle, who is running the event, and we are going to be responsible for the youth zone and making sure that that kind of runs smoothly. And we were also given the drafts for the joint waste management plan, and we're planning to submit on that as soon as we finish liaising with the enviro leaders of our various schools to kind of get a youth perspective on what needs to be changed, but that should be nearing completion sometime in the future.
Thank you, Max. I've been down to Old Lumpy and it's looking fantastic. There's a little bit more painting to be done when the weather improves, I think. And the board, which I think you paid for, I think it's fantastic. It's good. It's really interesting. It looks interesting, and it was good to read. And it was also fascinating to see how long ago that something regarding skating. I remember my son was a skateboarder, but not terribly good. I hope he never watches this video. Had lots of holes in jib. There you go. But it's interesting to see the history, and Chris Kirby, I think, was one of the original people who got skateboarding into Nelson, and he's mentioned in the board, which is fantastic. The other thing, I saw Councillor Walker's face light up when you said that you were going to submit to the waste management plan. So if you want to get any information from Councillor Walker, he's really interested in it. So while he's there, you use him. So it's great. Thank you. Any other questions or comments, Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I just, and it's probably a question for somebody else, but in this terms of reference, you've got an age put in there between 14 and 24 years of age. That seems a little older than I would have thought for a youth council. Is there a reason for this? Is it to get Polytech or what? Can you help me, Emma?
So, through the chair, it's always been 14 to 24, and we did look at the ages while we were writing this terms of reference, and we decided to keep as 14 to 24, because that age group, roughly like 20 to 24, it's really important we try our best to get somebody from that age category, and that opens it up to anybody at NMIT, or people working in our region, or also people of that age sometimes end up working with younger people through community groups, so it's good to have them on youth council. And we've just got it open so that they can apply, and we do try and get some older youth on the council to bring their perspective as well as the younger ones.
Thank you. Yes. We've got a few, so I'm going to go to Councillor Laurie first. Can you please put your hands up?
Thank you.
Councillor McGirt, did you have a question?
The older I get, the younger 24 gets every year. It's amazing. So my question is about the change to the Constitution through the chair. Do you think changes to the Constitution will increase the chances of Youth Council being able to attract a wider range of young people? Is there anything in the Constitution that can be tweaked to sort of cast the net wider when it comes to getting people around your table?
Through the chair, we haven't really made any serious changes like that to our terms of reference. We still have the same community groups and school groups represented that we say we want to basically take on to the youth council. And this terms of reference is mostly for the 20 that do get put on the Nelson Youth Council, so I don't think it's going to have major changes to the people that apply. We've still got the same kind of value and idea to bring in lots of people. We try our best, but yeah.
I do know it's oversubscribed. I don't know by how many. I think quite a few. Ms. Large, would you like to come down and comment on that? Because you're about to go into the next round, aren't you?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So through the chair, thank you. So last year we had over 60 apply for the 20 positions, and that has been consistent for the last at least 8 years. So there's quite a few missing out on the opportunity.
Through the chair, that's great to hear. In terms of some people's perception of youth council, it tends to attract similar sorts of high achieving young people. And I'm wondering if, in an effort to bring in a wider range of people, do you go out and shoulder tap people at schools that perhaps might not get into youth council through the normal processes?
Through the chair, that's really important to us as youth councillors, and it's one of the main things that we're responsible for, is to find people suitable. We don't just like put out a poster and that's it. It's our job to go and find people and talk to different groups, not just within our school, to find people that will fit the role and do well.
One last question for me through the chair. Thank you. Does that include going to places like Youth Nelson and those sorts of groups? Yep. Great. Thanks.
Thank you. It's interesting, isn't it? Yes, they do. Yes. Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, I think some of the questions have already been asked and answered, and just following up on some of the comments that Emma has made, particularly around the terms of references, it was quite a long process. I think they started on it last year and carried on with it. So it is, the language used is much, I suppose, is much plainer, less legalese, I suppose, and written in plain everyday English to basically as a guide for the youth councillors, and it's basically it's their fingerprints all over this. It's nothing to do with us really. And just picking up on some of the comments that Councillor Laurie said, is that do cast their net wide and to deal with alternative education, people who are in employment, people who work, people who are young people who are at MNIT and other educational institutions around there. It is a big commitment for them, and the availability is a constraint. I am aware during the course of this year there was a particularly gifted student who came from a difficult background, was unable to commit, so it was actually sad to lose her voice at the table. But one of the joys I do have about sitting on the youth council is they actually hold each other pretty accountable for what they do and what they say, so I think we're well served. I'm happy to move the recommendation and would endorse the comments and the terms of reference.
Thank you, Councillor McGurk. I'd just like to say thank you for your work with the Youth Council. I know you enjoy it, you look like you enjoy it, and it's quite a special position. There are two people two councillors who attend the Youth Council, and when we started to look at the makeup of how we were going to support the Youth Council, it was decided that one constant was a good thing, and then the rest of us get to come along from time to time, and again that gives the youth councillors a chance to meet different councillors. If you've got two constants the whole time, they never get to meet anybody else. So I think it's worked really well, and I thank you again for your input to that group. Who have I got next? I've got Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through to Emma, really, this question is. Emma, help me with this, please. Do you really need, do you think, to have the ages specified in there, in your constitution?
Through the chair, we've just kind of left it broad with the 10 years, 14 to 24, because then it leaves doors open to any youth. Doesn't mean that we have to have ones that are really young, and doesn't mean that we have to have ones that are older. Just kind of kept it open that are within like the youth age band that most other youth councils have as well.
Thank you for that. Through you, Madam Chair, to Emma again. Where I'm coming from is that could you function without those ages specified in there? That's the question I'm grappling with, because today we're trying to not discriminate on the basis of age. So, you know, there could be a 13-year-old that was suitable. There could be a 25-year-old. So I have some difficulty with that. I would prefer myself, and I just wondered how you feel if it wasn't in there at all.
Through the chair, we actually did have in the past, Jenna Stallard, when she applied, she was 13. So we did make an exception for her. So I don't think that would be an issue, even though it does say 14 to 24. If somebody really wants to join the youth council, then they can anyway, and we can kind of consider that their age and their suitability. We just don't want youth that are too young, that are still in intermediate, as we want. We just feel that it's better if everyone's kind of not like 12 and under, and also older, than they're kind of leaving that youth category and entering adulthood.
Thank you, Emma. Did you want to second the receiving of this? Great, thank you. I've got Councillor Fulton next.
Yes, thank you, through the chair. I am following on from some of Councillor Laurie's questions. I think that the Youth Council does a wonderful job, and I think the way you select your youth representatives is really positive as well. But I do have some concerns that this environment, even just walking through the doors into this environment, is quite alienating towards some members of our community, particularly perhaps more vulnerable youth. How do you go around trying to encourage youth who might not otherwise put their hand up for Youth Council, and particularly Māori representatives? Do you, what approaches are you taking with that?
Through the chair, as said before, we do try and shoulder tap people that we think are suitable and go and enter different groups to explain what we do and to see if any of them would be keen or willing to give it a go. And then if people are basically, as second term or third term youth councillors, it's our role to help the first term youth councillors. So we have to identify maybe those who are a little bit scared to go into an environment like this, who haven't ever done anything like that, and it's our job to make sure that they're comfortable and can exceed in the role.
Ms. Lodge.
Through the chair, I'd just like to add to that. So I'm very aware of how scary this is for some youth, and so part of what I started doing a number of years ago is induction is actually in here. So many of you have attended induction, and that gives young people an opportunity to be in the chamber and see it as a room and get used to it as an empty room without all of the setup. But there is a level at which there's a confidence needed to continue on youth council. So it's managing that that balance. And as Councillor McGurk said, this year we had a very gifted young person, but it was just a little bit too much for her with as much support that we put in. And so it's making sure we open the doors for young people to give it a go and put as much support in as possible, but making sure that we don't put them out of their depth to continue on at council.
Yes, I understand, thank you. That's really helpful. I think it is something because of the environment of governance, we'll continue to struggle to perhaps have the voices of the people who we most need to hear from. I know when we did the workshop on the Stoke Library, we had an amazing young man come in and talk to us, and I sometimes think, he'd be a great person to have on Youth Council. So perhaps occasionally, I wonder if it might be worth all members of staff keeping that in mind, and that if we chance upon someone in our work who might be suitable, that just perhaps getting them to get in touch with Rachel is another way of opening those doors for people who might not even know Youth Council exists.
Thank you, Councillor Fulton. I think that sometimes we have to go out to people as well, and that can happen, and the Youth Council is probably not one size fits all, and some of the roles that they have to do, some drop out because they find that they can't commit themselves to what the package actually requires. But there's always the ability to go out and talk to people outside the building and outside our normal working environment, and get those ideas from those people that we need to get from. I'm a great believer in going and standing on the street and talking to people. So I'm sure the youth councillors do that as well. Emma, I just wanted to say thank you for responding to some fairly challenging questions this morning. You've done brilliantly. One last question, Councillor Fulton.
I note that you're changing your terms of reference to say that if a member is absent from 3 meetings, their membership will be terminated. Is there some sensitivity around that? If someone's been unwell, or, I mean, how are you going to actually determine if, I understand why you've put it in there, but how do you have some sensitivity with respect to people who might have put their hand up and be well-intentioned, but who knows, life might have thrown them a curveball?
Through the chair, we do consider that it's up to us whether we do terminate their membership or not due to their circumstances. If they're just not wanting to come, then we will terminate them. But if something has happened like that, we can give them like another chance. And we are quite close, so we do know mostly what's going on in other people's lives. So does Rach kind of know why they're missing the meetings, so that can help. Yeah. Does that answer?
Yeah, that answers it. I just wonder if it might, again, the language is such that it might alienate some people, and I just wonder if it needed to be softened slightly. I mean, it does say unless the Youth Council resolves otherwise, but it could perhaps...
I think we'll let the youth councillors take your feedback. It's not, we're just receiving this, it's for them to write. So, but I think the feedback's really good, so they can take your feedback.
Yeah.
And the next time that they review it, they may wish to do that.
Yeah.
It's really just for our information here, we can't change anything. I have Councillor Walker, and then we'll probably put this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not a member of the committee, so I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I just recall about a year ago, I think it was, that we had a really great presentation from a young guy about a skate park at Stoke. And he sat there with his parents, and he was magic. And he let us know in no uncertain terms as to what's required. He even suggested that if they had got established there, that they could keep an eye on the police across the road. So they had all things covered. And I'd really like to think, from memory, I think he was at either Garran or Waimea as schooling. But I would love to think that he's on your target. I'm not sure his name, but I'm sure we could find it out. But I feel that he would be a great prospect for you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. I remember him as well. He was very passionate, and he had all the negatives and responses to that, so it was great. I'm ready to put that, so I'm going to we received this report. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Option number 9, options for reviewing Council's positive ageing policy, and I'm going to ask Nikki McDonald to come to the chair. Thank you, Ms McDonald. Are there any changes or alterations or updates on this?
No changes to the report, Madam Chair.
Right, we'll take it as read, and I'll ask if there are any questions of Ms McDonald. Councillor McGurk.
I have a couple, thanks, Madam Chair. As I've read the report, and I'm really interested, you just talk about numbers, but I'm really interested in the sort of different demographics and ethnicities that are involved, because we've got an emerging migrant community, we've got a Pacific community, and we've got a Maori community. Is something that should be taken into account, or have you got any comment that we can include in the strategy?
Yes, through the chair, that's a good question, because I think often we think of older adults as a sort of a homogenous group, and they're not, they're very diverse. And one thing that's happening around New Zealand is the ethnic diversity of our older adults is increasing. And there is some discussion in the sort of aged care area that we're not used to that and not ready to respond with, there may be language issues, cultural issues we need to be aware of. Generally speaking, the research shows that older adults who are from ethnic minorities find it harder to find appropriate housing, healthcare and social support, and they're much more vulnerable to isolation. So I think those are things we would want to be thinking about. And our own multi-ethnic council has done some research on ethnic minorities ageing in Nelson, and they found there were some particular issues in housing for them. and also in trying to connect to the Nelson community, they found it rather closed. Those who were happiest were those who were part of an extended family network. But there's a bit of a stereotype that ethnic minorities sort of look after their own older people, but it's surprising how quickly the cultural norms of the new country are adopted by the younger generation. So we can't make those assumptions, and older people from an ethnic minority who don't have their family around them are really quite vulnerable in a lot of ways.
Very interesting. Yes?
Another question, that you touched on, just talking about the housing requirements, is this sort of, if we look at, you know, our population in the future, what part of the strategy will address to the different housing needs that we've got in for particularly an ageing population, and one with increasing sort of other needs in terms of sort of mobility and issues like that?
Yes, again, a very good question. Housing comes up again and again as one of the central issues for well-being in later life, and yet the statistics we see show that the proportion of home ownership is declining relatively rapidly. So we can expect that the future cohorts of older people in Nelson are less likely to own their own home, and you can imagine the vulnerability it brings if you're a renter in your later life and vulnerable to being moved on because the property's to be sold or the rent goes up. And we're already hearing stories like that, and you may have seen in the newspaper stories about older men who are sleeping in cars, and we had through the LTP, the Women's Centre, come in and talk about older women who were still in work but couldn't find suitable rental accommodation, were really vulnerable. So one thing we have been doing is working through the Top of the South Impact Forum on housing, and we're actually going to have a community housing forum on the 21st of September, so we've just set the date, and one of the things we will be looking at is how do we try and get better choice for older adults about the sort of housing that they need.
You've touched on one of the sort of, just in my own observations, I'm not sure how scientific it is, but one of you picked on a particularly older woman who probably alone for whatever reason, whether they've left a relationship breakdown or the return to Nelson after living away from somewhere else to look after an elderly relative. They're getting trapped in sort of low-skilled, well, not low-paid, part-time, casual work, unable to get finance into their own home, and they're sort of stuck on a rental trap, and stuck in a situation where they're probably, because of their income, it's probably not the choice of rental as often. You go to a house, it's sort of a block of flats, scully flat, really neat and tidy one, occupied by a person like this, another scully flat. So I'm not like that. So that's one issue, and the other one is a single men who are perhaps not quite that age, but there's an emerging cohort of ones that are poorly socialised, in low-skilled employment, and they are going to be a big problem as they move through that way. The other one is the connection with the health DHB and Nelson Marlborough Health. What sort of connections we had with them in developing the strategy?
Through the chair, we've already had initial discussions, and they're very keen to work with us on a strategy because, of course, they see a huge increase in demand for their services that they're probably going to be really stretched to try and provide. So a strategy which helps people prepare and also focuses on the importance of staying well, being healthy and being active is going to help them. So I think that they're going to be a key partner, and they've also done a lot of good research and analysed the demographics, and I think we can draw on that.
I'm going to go to the Mayor. She has to leave shortly, so.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm sorry, I've just got to head out to a event at the airport. Look, I'm really delighted to see this report. I just want to thank Nikki for bringing this forward. Critical piece of work, and I know strongly supported by several members of this committee. What I would like the committee to do is actually just to move this forward a little bit more quickly by establishing the membership of the working group today. I think you might as well do that while it's here. Normally when we do that, we have a terms of reference for a working group, and I didn't note that in the report, but I think that's something that could be delegated to the chair and group manager to develop and approve. Either I'm looking at which group manager. I'm sorry, Roger, Nikki. I'm going Nikki at this end, I think, for this one. Yes, Roger's nodding. So I just think I've popped up some words, Madam Chair, so I've popped those past the Deputy Mayor, who said he'd be happy to move what I've sent up, because I'm not going to be here, and so obviously I can't do that procedurally. Just in terms of the membership, what I would propose, and I've just, and I've had some discussion with the chair around this, is that we already have 2 councillors that are connected into organisations that are working with our ageing population, the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Laurie, and I think it would be really good to have that continuity with the 2 as members of the working group. I think it's critical that the chair is involved as well in this one. And the other area that I'm conscious of is that there is a really strong crossover here around our ageing population and infrastructure, the way the city is designed. And I think it is important that we have a crossover to that area. I think the Chair of Works and Infrastructure has got a large enough role at the moment. I think the Deputy Chair could probably squeeze this one in.
He's on this committee.
And he is on this committee, so therefore you've got the membership working with the members of this committee, but the crossover. So what I proposed is that those 4, so Deputy Mayor was, I believe,
Councillor
to
Laurie,
move that, and hopefully that makes some logical sense to the committee. I just would say when we come to do this that...
Councillor Courtney's willing to second that.
Thank you. When we come to do this, and I will give you probably a series of maybe brown bag lunches, we'll see what they are, just in terms of my trip to Denmark. This is an issue that Europe is grappling with now, and they've been doing some really, really good work around ageing populations. What impact that is having on drift into urban areas, the impact on smaller rural communities or provincial areas, and applying a model that is working very well around is a quadruple helix approach. And I will talk some more about that when I've got some more time, but very relevant and good to see that. I can see that's being embedded here in the paper that's come forward from Nikki, really out there engaging the community and all aspects of the community in this, because it's so important. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Deputy Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm more than happy to move that as I have.
Thank you, and you have a seconder already, Councillor Courtney.
Yes, I'd like to just speak to it briefly if I can. I'm on the A4A's committee, which covers all those who have a form of disability of some description. So by having that representative on this group, you can finger out and touch those others like the blind and whatever. Positive ageing, it's good to have Matt there. That's another good link. And the Mayor's right when she talks about works and services, and anybody who's been involved in the focus on Stoke, and we'll be meeting again soon, hope, will know that area of Stoke has something like 20-25% of the population are over the age of 65, and there are quite a few of them in mobility scooters or whatever other form. And our footpaths are vital for them to be able to communicate from one part to the next. So that's just touching some of that work that we need to include. Nikki, I want to say thank you. You've done a good job, and you continue to do a good job, because I think for some reason you have a bit of an interest here. You really are enjoying that role, and I have to say that I'm really impressed with what you're doing. You are really digging down into the core issues and the causes that we need to address as a council. I regard this positive ageing policy as one of the major policy platforms that this council will deliver for the future. And it's vital, it's important. It's not rewarding the generation, it's actually catering for the excitement that we can have by looking after each other. So I totally support the work you're doing, and I do applaud you for that. And I ask the council to look at this policy and say, this is probably one of the most important pieces of work you will ever do while you're around this table for the future. So well done, and I totally support.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Right, well, you can either have questions, which I think we may have. Are there any questions left? There are, thank you. Right. Okay, well, if we're done with questions, then we'll let Nikki go, and we'll move into debate or comments, and we'll go to Councillor Courtney. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to endorse everything that the Deputy Mayor has said so eloquently, and I'm particularly pleased with the composition of the working group. And I want to single out one, and that's Councillor Rutledge. Now, he's also chairman of the Regional Transport Committee. And to my way of thinking, I was going to question Officer Nikki about this, but she's now moved away, but to my way of thinking, this is one of the key areas that has to be focused on. Because nothing removes a person's mobility and independence more, I think, from the community than inadequate transport services. So I'm particularly pleased to see Councillor Rutledge there, because I'm sure he will get the message that I'm trying to convey here to you. It is very, very important that transport is at front and centre of this proposed plan.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. And now I have Councillor McGurk. No, you're all done? Right. Well, I'm speaking for this. And I also would like to thank Ms MacDonald for her work, because this was only decided at the last meeting, and here we are, and we've got something to look at already. So I feel like we've got some progress fairly quickly, and I think we'll just keep going as fast as we possibly can in a controlled manner. This is an important piece of work, and one that I've quite been passionate about for some time. The ageing demographic has concerned me, and we need to be thinking about it and doing something about it, not just talking about it. So I'm very pleased that we're moving along at a reasonable pace, and hopefully that will continue. So I would look forward to working with the councillors on this working group, and the next part of it will be to approach community people for the next piece of work. So it's very much a work that's going to carry on for some time beyond us probably, but we need to, I'd like to think that we can look at it a little bit with a different view, and start with a broad vision really, and see where we get to. So I'm ready to put this. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The next item is the verbal update on the Stoke Library water tightness. And our staff member's not here that I was expecting, so shall we move on to item 11 then? We'll come back to 10 when we've got our staff member. We're obviously racing through the agenda a little bit quicker, certainly than I anticipated. So we'll go on to the Green Meadows progress update, and we've got Mr Laverdis coming to the table. Thank you. Are there any corrections to the report, or just an update?
Through the Chair, no corrections to the report.
Thank you. Pages 61 to 64.
Through the Chair, I'll take the report as read. Happy to answer any questions. I can advise under item 4.4, in connection with checking the buckling on the eastern side of the roof, that has not taken place as yet, and that's scheduled for next week.
Thank you, Mr Laverdis. Any questions on this, or is it self-explanatory? Councillor Fulton.
Yes, through the Chair. Sorry, I just missed what you said in response to what, 4 point?
Item 4.4, the top of page 62, that inspection hasn't taken place yet, it's scheduled for next week.
Oh, okay, so that's why you can't give a verbal update on it?
That's my verbal update.
That's your verbal update, okay, great. Yeah, I have a question. So a full-time clerk of works, 4.1, has been appointed. What's the difference between a clerk of works and a project manager? And should we have had a clerk of works appointed from the onset?
Mr Laverdis.
So, through the Chair, a clerk of works is essentially a project manager, but it is a full-time role. So this clerk of works is on site full-time every day from 8 to 5. So that's the role of the clerk of works. So the clerk of works checks absolutely everything. In relation to your question, should there have been a full-time clerk of works?
So we are in a public meeting at the moment, so we'd probably rather answer that in public excluded business in terms of reviewing what we're done and not done, but I can say that a clerk of works is a very old-fashioned term.
Okay.
Yeah, so we are sort of like going back to the future a little bit in terms of employing a clerk of works. It's not quite so common these days.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Laurie?
Thank you, and thanks for the report through the chair. All things being equal, when do we now think we'll be able to open our new community centre in Stoke, and when will it be up and running?
So through the chair, if I refer to you on item 4.7 on page 62, what we're focusing on at the moment is quality. I don't have a completion date as yet. What I'm saying is that it's unlikely to be before December, but I don't have a specific date. But we are working towards addressing all their issues and focusing on quality at the moment. So unfortunately, I can't give you a date, but it'll be sometime in December.
Sometime next year.
It's December, hopefully.
Through the chair,
it is unlikely to be before December 2018, but I can't give you a fixed date.
So sometime next year?
No, we are
likely to be before.
We are hoping to have.
Oh, I see. So you're hoping in December.
We're hoping to have it open in December.
Got it. Thank you.
But one of the things that has been emphasised to us is the work's got to be, this repair work's got to be done in a calm fashion and in a logical order. So, and so that's what we're focusing on, is making sure that things are done properly and in the right order.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor McGurk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This might be a question that might be best, I'll take some advice from the Chief Executive on this one about the risks, and you've identified as reputational risk as the most, by far the largest risk. Is that still the case, or? Because I'm wondering, the history of building companies around the country and solvency and things like that, and so I'm just take some advice from the Chief Executive, if this is probably in terms of public excluded.
Watson and Hughes are a sizable construction firm with a lot of work throughout New Zealand. We don't think that is one of our top risks at the moment. But it is something that we have looked into quite in some depth and made inquiries through the industry.
So you've identified as a risk, you've dealt with, you've looked at it, assessed it,
and it's not a high risk at the moment. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, excuse me. I'll talk to you in a minute. Councillor Corney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Officer Lavertus. Is the Green Meadows fully let now? Fully tenanted? The Green Meadows building, is it fully tenanted?
Through the chair, so there's nobody occupying the building at the moment, but there are lease.
I've missed. I'll just stop you there. When it does finish, and when it is finished, have we got all the spaces let?
I understand that to be the case, yes.
And that would have been done through you, Madam Chair, that would have been done some time ago. I would imagine they've been put in place because the finishing date has been moving often. Are we looking after those tenants, those prospective tenants, and what have we been doing to manage that situation? Because they would have been planning for a date, it was then moved, planning for another date, it was moved and moved and moved, and I would like to think that we've been managing that in a very professional way and understanding way, and I'd like some assurance on that, please.
I think the Chair, through you should answer this.
Yes, I am going to answer this. So thank you, Councillor Courtney. The report does state that we have an external person and myself looking after the tenants, and we have been meeting with them and assuring them as much as is possible, hearing their concerns and addressing those. it's an ongoing connection, and that will continue for as long as it's required. And I'm always available, as is the consultant.
Are there any spaces still available in the Green Meadows Centre?
I think that you, Mr Hunter may be better to answer that. I understood that the spaces were pretty much booked through, but a lot of the spaces are able to be booked by different groups at different times for different things rather than a sole space. It is a building designed to be shared, but the spaces that were allocated have been signed up. If Mr Hunter's agreeing with that, that's the case. Is that clear?
No,
Not clear.
really.
I don't think you look like you understood. So the spaces that were going to be leased have been leased, and the other spaces are spaces that are able to be booked by different groups at different times. For instance, the large area will be used by maybe people that are having weddings or birthdays or celebrations. The Stoke Seniors will also use some of that space, so it's pretty much fully booked. The Chief Executive's going to add to that.
So what the tenants have entered into is an agreement to lease, and when they get possession of their part of the building, then they sign a lease document. But my understanding is, and Peter or Nikki would correct me if I'm wrong, but all the spaces that the council intended to have leases have been leased. So there's now some of the community rooms that people would hire for a night that are not allocated to anyone in particular.
And the question stems from the fact that we cut down the size of the cafe by about half. So I was just wondering, that leaves a space there that would have been occupied.
The cafe went from 100 to 84, I think, or something along those lines.
So it leaves a small space there, does it? Just
There is a room that is able to be used or booked, a small room to the side of the cafe. Correct? Mr. Levitas, would you like to confirm that, or you're on another planet?
Yeah, I was wondering who you
You're
were. I
thinking
thought
that-
you were looking at Mr Hunter, but I think Nikki confirms that
Yes,
that is
that
the
is
case.
correct.
My
So-
apologies.
Right, thank you. I'd just like to make sure that I'm not saying something I shouldn't be saying, or that I haven't quite got it right, so it's nice for the staff to confirm what I'm saying. Right, and are you finished, Councillor? Right, so I've got Councillor Barker. Have I missed anybody? Councillor Walker will be next.
Thank you. This is just a question as Chair of the Governance Committee. I'm referring to section 4.16, last bullet point. I just hope that this is not a precursor to any bad news that could be coming up about not completing our capital projects. Is there any seriousness to this statement here? Other projects being delayed? How big is the risk? What is the nature of this?
The Chief Executive will answer that.
So we've got a lot of resources committed to this project at the moment. In terms of my time, Ms Harrison, Chris, Nikki, Ms McDonald, so there's a lot of, and of course Alec is heavily involved in it, so there's a lot of senior leadership time involved. We have one of our more experienced project managers full-time on site, and we have a projects team that is short of resources at the moment. Yes, this project is representing a risk for this year, and we are looking at ways to address that. It's something that I'll be discussing in more detail with my employment committee probably next week. The projects team, the organisation is under pressure as a result of this project.
So just for the information and the knowledge of council, is it possible that a report to the Governance Committee might be prepared outlining the risks at some stage? There is a concern that we continue to improve on completing our capital projects within the year.
So in this financial year, we are changing our reporting structure to to bring reports on all the major projects to the parent committees. So I'm expecting a far more, the councillors will get a far closer look at some of those major projects, and I expect through those discussions and then the summary up to audit, risk and finance, we will have that conversation. So I think you will see a difference in approach when those reports start rolling out at the end of the September quarter. So I think by the time we pull them together, it's early November before they start to arrive, but then you will understand the picture. And there will be projections on each of those projects.
Yeah, I appreciate that. My only request is please, no surprises.
As we all ask for. Councillor Walker.
Thank you. I noticed 4.9, the last mention is of a centre management plan. We're still intending to have a centre manager, and if so, when do we start the recruitment process for that position?
So through the chair, the CLM have already been appointed to manage the centre, so that work is all in place.
Councillor Courtney, did you have something?
Yes. There's just a subsequent one through you to the chief.
After you, I'll be asking that somebody move, you may wish to, move that we receive the report.
Well, I'll move that if you like, yeah.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor
I just wanted
Porter.
through to the
Yes.
Chief Executive to ask through you, Madam Chair, whether he's had time to have a look at my suggestions I sent him for an external review. He did say thank you. That was the sum total of it. But I just want to know and be reassured that my time spent on preparing a list of things that could be included in the external review of our processes will be looked at and taken into consideration at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Mr Courtney. I will allow the Chief Executive to answer. I just want to say that with an external review of process, which I think is probably what you are addressing rather than specifically Green Meadows, probably will need to be addressed at a council meeting. I just wonder whether that could, if the Chief Executive in his response may like to respond to that, that a review of process would probably not sit with this committee, but the delegations probably move up to council, but I'll let him respond while he's responding to you.
So I've looked through your list of questions. I have to say it's a very comprehensive list. I don't know whether I wanted to dive into that level of detail, but to be honest, I haven't turned my mind to that yet. And until I get that building open, that's where my discretionary time is going at the moment, Councillor. I've certainly undertaken that when I prepare that terms of reference, I would consult with the Mayor and with the Chair of Audit, Risk and Finance. I haven't given any thought yet as to how I would get that signed off by the wider council. But obviously there's no point in doing a review if the council doesn't consider that it touched on the right issues. That's just a waste of my time and whoever does the investigation.
Thank you for that. We were asked as councillors to contribute, so that I've done that.
Thank you. I think it looks like it's going to go to Audit Risk or council. You haven't decided yet?
I don't know.
Okay, I don't think it's going to come back here though. I think it's a bigger picture than what it sits with this committee. So I just wanted to make sure that I can pass the mantle over to somebody else. Mr Levitas, I think you can go. And I'm ready to put this. I think we've heard all the questions. I'm ready to put. So all those in favour of receiving this report? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. We now have to go back to item 10, and we've got Mr Edmondson here to give us a verbal update on the Stoke Library weather tightness. Welcome. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou, through you, the Chair. I'd like to report back on the Stoke Library water tightness. We were originally going to bring a report to this committee, but we felt that a verbal report would be more appropriate because we just want to work on some figures to be more conclusive to help you make a better decision. So I can report that we've completed a further investigation, and it confirms the previous concerns we brought to you in July on the 12th. And what we found is that there's areas there that there is water egress, but not as bad as the original findings. So what we're doing is we're producing some options for you in the report, and we want to bring that to the next meeting in October. One of the options will be a short-term fix, and the idea of that is that it will give you the opportunity to consider further options in the annual plan. So we're just waiting on the costings around that through the engineer that's doing some design work. In terms of the mould issue, we've had a second environmental scientist look at that. They confirm that it's just an isolated situation and there's no significant harm, and they've provided us a remedial plan to address that. That remedial plan, we believe, should be able to be implemented with the short-term fix. So that's all I've got to report at this stage. If there's any questions,
Thank you.
through you, the Chair.
There's a question from Councillor Corney.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you to Officer Jock. What does a short-term fix look like?
So we've had an engineer and building surveyor look at the details of the building, and they confirm that there's enough bracing within the structure of the wall that we may be able to put some strengthening underneath the box beam within the library and potentially lose the exterior box beams completely. We just need the details on that design to confirm that that can be possible, and it sort of involves recalculating the structural engineering calculations for the building. So yeah, that's the short-term fix.
And it doesn't require a replacement of the roof or anything like that?
Not at this stage, no. It's purely a structural item to give the buildings strength.
Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. So no concerns for the safety of staff or public?
No, the engineer assures us that the building's got structural strength, and the way they related it is that, you know, we're dealing with sort of an earthquake-prone situation, and that the strength of the building has been compromised, and but not to the degree that we need to, close the building. In terms of the mould issue, we've had two environmental scientists look at the situation. They both confirmed that it's not as worse as what they had thought, and it's isolated, and that it's treatable, and they've completed air monitoring, and we're waiting for the results of that back.
Okay. Also, through the Chair, any indication at this stage as to how long the library may need to be closed for us to do the work that we need to do?
I can't confirm that in detail until we've got those designs.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, John.
Thank you. Right, thank you very much for that report. So we'll see you next meeting with a bigger report. Thank you very much. So we don't need to resolve anything on that. So I'm going to declare that we're going to have a break for a coffee. I think we've done 90 minutes and it's time for you all to have a stretch. So we'll meet back here shortly, and then we will go into public excluded, but we'll do that mechanism after a cup of coffee. So about 10 minutes. Thank you.